Good morning. It's me, Rodney Glover, the candidate for governor of Florida. And I want to tell you how we got here. How did I get to trying to give you political access? It's really easy. We have been fighting for political access since the beginning of the Constitution. Who were the we? Black people, women, and black women have been fighting for political access since the Constitution was ratified in 1788. Now, I'm going to give you some things. The 14th Amendment, which still stands today as written, was the first time that they used the word male in the Constitution. This simply meant that, hey, right now, the Constitution, the protections are for men only. It took the 15th Amendment. Here's where everything got crazy. Because I told you we've been trying to get political access since the ratification of 1788's Constitution. Here's where things happened. Now we know there was a women's suffrage movement. So I gotta look at my notes because these names, they gotta be very important. You had, and hear me out, we had Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. These were all white women that were running the suffrage movement. We had Sojourner Truth, Frances Ellen, Watkins Harper. These were our black women that were part of the women's suffrage movement. And then we had Frederick Douglass running for black males, right? So that's our group of people that were trying to get political access to the Constitution. Here's where everything kind of fell apart. This is where you got to start paying attention. The 15th Amendment broke us apart. So we had blacks, black women, and white women all fighting for political access. So at this time, our government threw in and said, hey, we'll give you the 15th Amendment. So February 3rd, 1870, there was a conversation. It actually happened February 3rd, 1870. It gave black men access. Now, Susan B. Anthony and Miss Staten were like, wait. If the 15th Amendment only gives access to black men, where does that leave women? Where does that leave white women? White, educated women. So here's the division. At this time, the government said, hey, check this out. This is what we're going to do. You guys can argue about that. We're offering you the 15th Amendment. You can take it or leave it. So Frederick Douglass said what they call the Negro hour. He said, hey, man, this is the hour of the Negro. We need this access. Susan B. Anthony and Miss Stanton was like, hey, we also need this access. Why? Why was everybody fighting for this access? Because during this time, these three groups were suffering. Black people, white women, black women. They were suffering during this time, all trying to get constitutional access, the protection of the Constitution, to start putting the military, some of these services behind some of the bad things that were happening to black people and women and black women. Have to keep separating those because it's very important. Because what ended up happening was all three of these groups that were piggybacking. Now, black people were fighting for all types of equality, but the access to the Constitution was huge. So black men got it. And February 3rd, 1870. White, and they said, and that was the split between black people, white women, and black women. Here's the thing: when it split, Sojourner Truth and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, they were like, well, what about black women? Because 1920, we know that the 19th Amendment, this is 50 years later, we know that the 19th Amendment finally allowed for women to be able to be a part of the Constitution. Now, we also know that we had to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but the access is what started the trend to let this other stuff happen. Giving you access is what we've been fighting for years. Black people, women, and black women. But who was left completely out? History says it was black women until 1964 when we gave full access to these constitutional things, even though some states to this date still have issues. political access. Now, one of the most important things that I want you to understand is, do you know who was in charge that passed the 14th Amendment? Yes, it was European Caucasians. That's who it was. That's your history. They said this Constitution should only be for men only. That's who it should be for. Our split over the 15th Amendment was because women were saying we're tired of being raped, we're tired of being beaten, we're tired of being hurt. And Frederick Douglass' argument at the time had to have been, you can kill, abuse, rape, and hurt black people out in the open, but you cannot do that to white women. So we needed the access. So they had an internal battle over access. It's always been about political access. So when you see my platform and I'm pushing for you to get more political access, because you got to remember, Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution doesn't give us access to hold those federal individuals accountable to the citizens who put them in office. We push that over to Florida. 100.361 statute doesn't give us access to hold them accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, we've always been arguing over access. That's why I'm running for governor of Florida, because the history matters. You can fact check me on those dates. You can fact check me on those amendments, those articles. You can go find them. 1788, our Constitution's here. 14th Amendment, first time it used the word male. Voting rights only were for males. Who decided that? European Caucasian males did not want women to ever have access. So if you women are feeling attacked, it's rooted in our Constitution, which again is a living document. Even our state constitution is a living document. It gives us room to make adjustments. But without the access, none of this could have been possible. That's why access is so important. That's why having access to hold elected officials accountable will make things better, because the access made things better for everybody. It took some time. There are no ifs, ands, and buts about that. It took time. But with that access, there were some hardships that came along with it, but there were also some benefits. Ladies and gentlemen, give me the support by going to my website, downloading that petition, taking it to your supervisor of elections office, and let's keep expanding access. Because now you may be able to understand why so many people were up in arms about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because in the beginning, there was no diversity. It was men only. There was no equity. It was European Caucasian men only. There was no inclusion because they wrote it in the 14th Amendment before the 15th Amendment. They only wanted men. This is why people were fighting so hard at the root cause of DEI. There were some people that maybe didn't understand, and a lot of people don't teach it like that. But this is what happened. The 15th Amendment changed so much. It created such a divide because the suffering that was happening from being black, being a woman, and being a black woman was so detrimental that every one of us was fighting for access. What you would have done with that decision, if you would have had the ability to make it, I do not know what you would have done at that time, depending on what experiences you were going through. But I know it was enough for those white women to be very upset enough to say that they felt like the black people had turned their back on them. You imagine what type of suffering had to happen for them to be like, hey, do not leave us. They asked Frederick Douglass, please don't accept the 15th Amendment without us. He had to make a decision. Bigger picture, whether you think it's right or wrong, that's on you. He had to make a decision to decide whether or not take that Negro hour that he was talking about and give black people the opportunity to have that access. He did. Made that decision. It took 50 years of more suffering for white women to get there. But it took even longer for black women. So it's just something that we need to take into consideration when you try to ask yourselves, Is this the type of governor that I want? The type of governor that's trying to expand access? I hope I am. I really do. I really do. Because this is important. That's why I gave it to you. So I have it all on my website. I'm going to call it Political Access. So you can look it up. Look up all of my research. Look up all of my references. Go right ahead. This is important. That's why history is important. I want to give you access. I want to be the governor that gives you access. But I need your support. If we're looking to get money out of politics, then invest your time. That's how we're going to beat money, with you investing your time. Thank you for your time, because I know it's just 10 minutes. I really appreciate it. And I hope that I have shed some light on some history. You guys have a great day.